The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Victoria Chen's corner office as she sat across from a man she'd never expected to need. Her hands trembled as she clutched a folder containing documents that could destroy everything she'd built. Marcus Webb, a quiet elementary school teacher with kind eyes and paint-stained fingers, studied her with a mixture of confusion and concern. He'd received her desperate phone call an hour ago, asking him to meet her urgently, and now she was about to make the most humiliating request of her life. "I need you to pretend to be my husband," she whispered, her voice cracking with a vulnerability that no one in the corporate world had ever witnessed. "Just for 6 months. I'll pay you whatever you need." The words hung in the air between them like a confession, raw and desperate, and for the first time in 15 years, the untouchable CEO of Chen Industries felt utterly powerless. Marcus had known Victoria back when she was just Vicky, the ambitious scholarship student who used to tutor his younger sister in the university library. That was 12 years ago, before she'd transformed herself into one of the youngest female CEOs in the country, before the designer suits and the carefully controlled image. They'd lost touch after graduation, living in completely different worlds, until 3 weeks ago, when they'd accidentally reconnected at a parent-teacher conference. His daughter Emma was struggling in school after his wife's death 2 years earlier, and Victoria had been there visiting her company's charity program. They'd exchanged numbers, shared coffee once, talked about old times. Nothing more. And now this. If you believe in second chances, in the power of kindness to change lives, please take a moment to like this video. Leave a comment about what you would do in this situation. Share it with someone who needs to hear this story, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world, and it helps us bring more heartfelt stories like this one to life. Victoria's story spilled out in broken fragments. Her grandfather, the founder of Chen Industries, had written a clause into his will that she'd discovered only recently. To inherit full control of the company, she needed to be married by her 35th birthday, which was in 6 months. The old man had been traditional, believing that marriage brought stability and wisdom. Her board of directors, mostly older men who'd never fully accepted her leadership, had already found out. They were circling like sharks, ready to install her cousin Daniel, a man who'd run the company into the ground for profit, caring nothing about the 15,000 employees who depended on Chen Industries for their livelihoods. She'd tried everything legal, every loophole, every option, but the will was ironclad, written by the best lawyers money could buy. She needed a husband, at least on paper, or everything her grandfather had built would be destroyed. Marcus listened without judgment, watching the mighty CEO crumble before him. He thought about his own struggles, raising Emma alone, working a teacher's salary, trying to fill the impossible void left by Sarah's death. The medical bills still haunted him, the debt that kept him awake at night. Victoria was offering him money, more money than he could imagine, enough to secure Emma's future, pay for college, maybe even breathe again. But money had never been enough of a reason for Marcus Webb to do anything. He'd turned down lucrative corporate training positions to stay in the classroom. He'd refused his in-laws' wealth to maintain his independence. Money alone wouldn't make him betray his values or use the memory of his marriage as a transaction. "What's my one condition?" he asked quietly, already knowing he was going to say yes, but needing something real to anchor this arrangement in truth rather than desperation. Victoria looked up, mascara smudged, looking more human than he'd ever seen her. "Anything." "Name it." Marcus leaned forward, his voice steady and certain. "This doesn't stay business. If we're going to do this, we do it right. We actually try to be there for each other, really be partners, support each other through whatever comes. No pretending with each other, only with the world. And you become part of Emma's life, really part of it, not just someone playing a role. She's lost too much already. I won't have her get attached to someone who's going to disappear the moment a contract expires. If you're going to be in her life, in our life, even temporarily, it has to be real while it lasts." The condition left Victoria speechless. She'd expected demands for money, for control, for protection. Instead, he was asking for authenticity, for emotional investment, for the one thing her world had taught her to hide. She'd built an empire by keeping people at arm's length, by never letting anyone see weakness, by treating every relationship as a strategic alliance. And here was this small-town teacher, this man who'd chosen children's finger paintings over corner offices, demanding that she be human. The months that followed changed everything in ways neither of them anticipated. Marcus moved into Victoria's penthouse with Emma, who'd been initially confused but quickly charmed by the elegant woman who started joining them for breakfast. Victoria learned to navigate the strange terrain of domesticity, initially awkward and formal, asking permission before touching anything, treating the living room like a boardroom. But Emma, with the innocent wisdom of a 7-year-old, slowly broke through those walls. She'd climb into Victoria's lap during movie nights, ask her to help with art projects, request bedtime stories in that sweet, trusting way that assumed love was freely given. And something inside Victoria, something she'd locked away when her own parents had chosen business over parenting, began to crack open. Marcus watched the transformation with quiet amazement. He saw Victoria learning to braid Emma's hair, her competent executive hands fumbling with bobby pins, laughing at her own mistakes. He noticed her starting to come home earlier, trading business dinners for family dinners, teaching Emma about confidence and ambition, while Marcus taught patience and creativity. They developed routines, the three of them, silly traditions like Friday pizza nights and Sunday morning pancake competitions. The penthouse that had been a showpiece became a home, filled with Emma's artwork, Marcus's books, and the sound of genuine laughter. But it was the quiet moments that undid them both. Late nights when Emma was asleep and they'd share wine on the balcony, talking about dreams and fears and regrets. Victoria confessing how lonely her success had been, how she'd sacrificed everything for approval she never received. Marcus sharing his grief, the way he still reached for Sarah in the morning, the guilt he felt for beginning to feel joy again. They started to see each other, really see each other, not as a desperate CEO and a struggling teacher, but as two wounded people learning to be whole. The board meeting that would decide Victoria's fate arrived with the cold precision of an execution date. She walked in with Marcus beside her, their marriage certificate filed, their story prepared. Daniel challenged them immediately, claiming fraud, demanding proof of a real marriage. He'd hired investigators, compiled evidence of their separate lives before, questioned the timing. The board members shifted uncomfortably, torn between tradition and suspicion, between supporting Victoria's proven leadership and honoring the founder's explicit wishes. Then Emma did something no one expected. She'd insisted on coming, dressed in her best dress, clutching a folder of her own. With the innocent courage of childhood, she stood before the board of stern businessmen and began speaking. She told them about how Victoria helped her with homework, how she taught her that being smart was beautiful, how she made Daddy smile again after being sad for so long. She showed them drawings she'd made, pictures of their family, annotated with a child's spelling of the word love, scattered everywhere. She explained, with the simple clarity that only truth possesses, that Victoria wasn't pretending to be her stepmom, she just was. The room fell silent. These hardened businessmen, most of them fathers and grandfathers, saw in Emma's presentation something that no legal brief could capture. The evidence of a real family, formed not through biology or contract, but through choice and care and daily acts of love. Daniel's objections withered. The vote was unanimous. Victoria Chen would retain full control of the company. Outside the boardroom, Marcus held Victoria as she finally let herself cry, years of pressure releasing in shuddering sobs. Emma hugged them both, not fully understanding the weight of what had happened, but knowing that her family was safe. And in that moment, Victoria realized that she'd gained something infinitely more valuable than corporate control. She'd gained a home. She'd gained love. She'd gained the courage to be herself. The 6 months approached their end, and neither Victoria nor Marcus mentioned the contract that was set to expire. The papers sat in a drawer, forgotten, irrelevant. What had begun as a desperate arrangement had transformed into something neither dared name, too fragile and precious to examine too closely. They danced around it, these feelings that had grown in the spaces between obligation and choice, both terrified of losing what they'd found. It was Emma who finally forced the conversation. asking one evening with childlike directness why they hadn't had a real wedding. She wanted a party, she explained, wanted to wear a flower girl dress, wanted to celebrate what she already knew to be true. Marcus and Victoria looked at each other across the dinner table. And in that look passed an entire conversation, a question and an answer, a fear and a reassurance. If this story has touched your heart, if you felt the emotion in this journey from pretense to truth, please let us know by liking this video and leaving a comment. Share it with someone who needs to believe that love can grow in unexpected places. Your engagement helps more people find these stories. Before we finish, please take a moment to comment below. What was your favorite moment in Victoria and Marcus's journey? We read every single comment, and your thoughts mean everything to us. Marcus reached across the table and took Victoria's hand, no longer following any script or playing any role. "We could make it real," he said softly. "Not for a board of directors or a contract, just for us, just because somewhere along the way, pretending became the truth." Victoria thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, so certain that love was a luxury she couldn't afford, that vulnerability was weakness, that success meant standing alone. She thought about the mornings waking up to Emma's laughter, the nights talking with Marcus until dawn, the feeling of finally belonging somewhere. She thought about her grandfather's will, his old-fashioned belief that marriage brought wisdom, and realized that perhaps he'd understood something she was only now learning, that true strength isn't found in isolation, but in daring to need someone, in choosing partnership over independence, in building something together. "Yes," she whispered, squeezing his hand, tears streaming freely down her face. "Let's make it real." Emma cheered, already planning the wedding in her mind, already knowing what the adults had taken months to discover, that the best families aren't the ones you're born into, but the ones you choose, the ones you build through daily acts of kindness and courage and love. And in that penthouse apartment that had become a home, 3 broken people became whole, not despite their wounds, but because they'd learned to heal together, to be real together, to stop pretending and start living. The CEO had begged the single dad to pretend, but what neither had expected was that pretending would teach them how to be authentic, that a business arrangement would become a love story, and that sometimes the greatest success isn't measured in corporate control or financial security, but in the simple, profound miracle of finding where you belong.